It's been several months since we've seen baseball, and it's back. And, you know, the amazing part is everybody talks about this these days, is that all sports are, you know, 12 months a year at this point. And
it's true. It's very true.
Baseball is no different. It's pretty much 12 months a year. It certainly is 12 months a year for the players. And we're getting a chance to see baseball for the first time since its break. And
Absolutely.
even though it's 12 months, it does take a break in the action, but the players keep going and the talk keeps going. So that's something that's interesting.
Yeah, between the Caribbean Series, which is played in early February, and even the World Baseball Classic, which obviously isn't this year. I believe they'll start it again in 2013. A lot of baseball year-round, and this spring training in particular, since the commissioner and the powers that be in the game of baseball did not want the World Series dripping into the month of November, everything has been moved up. I can't recall when the last time a spring training game was played this early. February 25th, and their spring training opening day actually is in late March. So yeah, we've got a lot of baseball ahead of us.
The rumor has it they moved it up because they didn't want it to run into November again.
Yes.
If you remember that in the post-September 11th world, we've had baseball in November almost every year.
Absolutely.
Prior to September 11th, baseball ended in October. And then when September 11th happened, baseball took a week off, a week and a half off, pushed the World Series back, and we then have ever since somehow found a way to have baseball in November. I think Major League Baseball would like to go away from that for many reasons, especially with having the World Baseball Classic. It makes it too short an off season. Obviously, these guys continue to work out.
Definitely.
They continue to work. There is no off season realistically, but they do need time away from the game where they're not doing it all the time. So why don't I tell you a little bit about sports while we're waiting for callers.
Sure.
The number, by the way, 347-480-1724.
I've got it memorized.
It's like a chorus over here. So sports is a great online sports television network where we're bridging the gap between athletes and fans. We're bringing fans into the athletes' world. We're having shows hosted by professional athletes.
Sure.
We're bringing athletes on as guests for our live programming as well. In addition to that,
Very interactive.
we're going to have
really like it, yes.
we're going to have athletes, and we already do have them Skyping in from wherever they are. They can host shows over Skype. They can participate in shows over Skype, and we have callers. We can take callers at 347-480-1724, and people can call in and participate. In addition to that, we have on-demand segments on our website that are shot, day-in-the-life stories, if you will, where we follow professional athletes into their lives and into their homes and off the field, into their communities, taking you into their lives. And it's sports.com, sport, content, and entertainment. It's the easiest way to remember it, and it's really exciting.
Very clever. And something you mentioned also, just kind of taking them into their lives. I think that is something that is almost lost in the art of reporting. I mean, you and I have been at this in various levels, and just to ask the general questions of, oh, how was the game last night, or hey, I noticed you're in a slump. We see that, we read that, but what we're trying to do, as you mentioned, is really understand maybe some of the preparation, what NFL guys do this time of year, what baseball guys do in December, obviously for the NFL Player of the Year. It was great to see guys who weren't in the Super Bowl conversing with some of their friends and just sharing some of their lives.
Well, I think you're 100% right, and I invite everybody to check out sports.com for more.
And one guy who has taken advantage of, and I really should have this memorized, 347-480-1724. I believe we have Harrison on the line with us. Harrison, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Welcome to sports.
Thanks. I had a question about my Yankees. I was wondering, who do we have for our fourth and fifth guys in our rotation now that Pettitte are retired? Are we planning on using Colon?
I think that is the plan. I don't necessarily know if it'll be Bartolo Colon or if it'll be Freddie Garcia or Mark Pryor. But as I had mentioned earlier, if one of those guys steps up, that's a plus. If two of those guys step up, that's a bonus. And they certainly have some rookies whose names escape me currently.
But the Yankees can't do this without making a move. The Yankees need to make a move. They need to get a pitcher, possibly two. There's very little room for margin in the AL East. There's very little room for them to maneuver right now. They are probably going to have to make a blockbuster move before the season is over. And certainly I would think in the first quarter of the season, in April, it might be good, because they've got to get off to a hot start. Obviously, their pitching staff is not what they expected it to be, and it's not going to be the caliber of what it was a year ago or 2 years ago. Now,
Sure.
I think A.J. Burnett could come back strong, especially when the pressure's on. He seems like a big money pitcher to me and a big pressure pitcher. I think that the question mark for them is what they do in the 3-4 spot. And I think that they need to fill that. Cliff Lee wasn't as big a loss to me as Pettit is for them, but I think that Pettit was done. I don't think Pettit, whether he wanted to play or not, whether he thought he could go through the grind or not, I think that Pettit really had nothing left in the tank. And I think that's why he left the game more than anything. Harrison, does that answer your question, or you feeling, how you feeling about these Yankees?
I'm feeling okay. Thank you.
That's it? How's the weather in Arizona?
It's okay. It's very sunny.
That's good.
Ready for spring training this year.
Yes. I look forward to getting out there in about 2 weeks, actually, taking in a couple of spring training games, and yeah, no place to be but Arizona.
What do you think there's been a lot of talk about the Yankees and about what's gone on this offseason with the Steinbrenners, Hal Steinbrenner talking a lot about Derek Jeter making waves in the paper, saying that Derek Jeter was busy building a mansion and not concentrating on baseball last season, or insinuating that. The contract negotiations were out in the open, and there's been talk about moving Jeter to center field, which he's adamantly said he doesn't want to do. How do you feel about your Yankees, and what do you feel should be done?
I guess I feel that they should either keep Jeter at short or they should play him DH or something. I feel like he wouldn't work as well at center field because they have Granderson, and he's a pretty good center fielder.
All right.
And I do have to say, and I agree with him in the sense that Jeter's a guy almost like Pettit in a sense. When he knows he can't do it anymore, I think he'll walk away. I just don't ever see him doing a position change. I just think he's too proud of his shortstop position.
I think you're right. I think the only position that Jeter would ever consider playing other than shortstop would be designated hitter. Right now it's Jorge Posada. Jeter's locked in for 3 to 4 more years. Obviously he could retire at any time. I don't see that happening. I see it being a pride thing. Unless he falls off majorly, I see Jeter going on with the Yankees for the next 3 seasons as shortstop and probably not picking up that 4th year. I think that that'll be, it's a player option, and I think that he'll decide that he's had enough. On the other hand, you don't really see him moving to DH because he hasn't been hitting that well.
Correct.
And you need some, and he's lost a lot of power. And you need somebody with
he's
power.
He's lost a couple steps as well. Sure.
In the DH spot. So, and you know, you've heard why doesn't he flip to third? And A-Rod. A lot of fans say that A-Rod move back to short, or move him to center, move A-Rod to short. I don't think that's going to happen. And I got to be honest. I don't even know how interested A-Rod would be at moving back to short now that he's settled at third.
Absolutely. Those you've got. I can't call them prima donnas, but they're set in their ways. And yeah, I think A-Rod's a guy, as opposed to Jeter, he would be a DH down the line because I do think he will break the home run record. But as far as an actual position on the field change, he stays at third and Jeter at short.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeter will get 3,000 hits this season. I think he will do that. Harrison, thank you very much for joining us from Arizona.
All right, thanks, guys.
Be good. Enjoy the weather.
Absolutely. Well, we were talking about Derek Jeter. How about Derek Jeter's first manager, Joe Torre? Pretty much on the verge of taking over Vice President of Operations with Big League Baseball. He's a guy who certainly has that pedigree.
I think it's an interesting move. I think it shows that Torre is done managing. I think he was done managing when he went to the Dodgers. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think if the Yankees had treated him in the right way and given him the respect he felt he deserved, and maybe even one more season, or maybe not, maybe just treated him the way he felt he deserved, he would have walked away. I think he had a little bit of that Brett Favre syndrome. He wanted to prove something to the organization, say he still had something, and kind of say, oh, you're going to discard me with the dish rags? I'm going to show you. And I think that is why Torre decided to come back to the Dodgers when he did. I think that goes into a lot of the reason why. I think he was tired. I think he was done. And I think that this is really him saying, I've had enough. Now, he could certainly go back and manage again, but realistically, he's managed a lot of championship teams. He's managed for many years at this point, and I think it's time. He's at the age where I think for him it's time, and I think his wife mentioned that she wanted him home more and wanted to spend more time with him. I think it's a nice fit for him. He can spend a lot of time in New York, where his charity is raising a lot of money and doing a lot of things. So I think it works well for Torrey across the board, allows him to spend time with his grandkids and his kids and his family. And I think that's what he wanted to do. And he can still be active and participate in baseball on some level.
Absolutely, because he's a guy who has a lot to offer, whether it's knowledge of the rules, whether it's just the general interaction of managers and Bud Selig. He's a guy who almost knows it all.
One of the classiest guys, though. He seems to, even in the way he handled the Yankee situation, he handled that very, very well, and handled that, to me, like a true gentleman and a class act, and really let everyone else sling mud around it,
Absolutely.
but never said a bad word.
Yeah, Joe Torre is definitely a kind of a New York icon. There's a couple little leagues here in the city named after him, so I think it's a good fit. I believe that official announcement comes tomorrow, but seems like it is certainly leaking all over. And yeah, indeed, Joe Torre will have a big-time role in Major League Baseball. He deserves it. I think we're both in agreement that he's a perfect fit.
You never know. He could pull a Dan Marino and step down tomorrow afternoon.
Remember that? Yes, indeed. He wanted to stay in the TV limelight. And
Torrey certainly could do TV, but I think that Torrey will enjoy this job. I think it's a good fit for him, and he'll have a good impact on baseball going forward. I think Selig is doing the right thing here in his move.
Absolutely. There's another team that also plays in New York.
There is? Just kidding. I love those Mets.
And you know, I mean, this is an organization that's really in shambles.
It is. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Whether they knew or not, or didn't know what was going on with Bernie Madoff, this organization is being hit hard by the trustee who is for the victims of Madoff, who is investigating. Basically, the owners of the New York Mets are being sued for a lot of money. They've run into financial trouble because they were tied up in the whole Madoff mess. They believed they had more money than they had. They also were awarded profits that were unfairly awarded because they were given to them and taken from other people as part of the Ponzi scheme. And so the Mets are in a really bad situation right now, but it hurts across the board because it hurts the players and it gives uncertainty to the players. It hurts the fans and it hurts the city. And of course, if the Wilpons were involved, then that's a bad situation and they need to be responsible and held responsible for that. If they were not involved and knowledgeable, then it's just an unfortunate situation. But if they were involved and knowledgeable, they need to be held responsible. If they didn't know about it, it's an unfortunate situation, but something has to be done. The Mets need to be saved. I think we've heard rumors of this for almost 2 years now. Supposedly they took a big loan from Major League Baseball. They have a lot of debt. I think, personally, I'd like to see Mark Cuban own the New York Mets. I think it would be interesting. I think he could bring them back. There's been talk of Donald Trump owning the New York Mets. Somebody has to step in, and before the end of the season, I think we'll see a sale of the Mets.
Hopefully. I mean, because I'm not necessarily a Mets fan, but as we said, it's good for the city. It is an organization that's won a couple of World Series. They were contenders really up until the last couple of years. I mean, they definitely were putting some product on the field.
They have a good core team, and it's not only good for
healthy.
And it's not only good for New York, it's good for baseball.
Definitely.
When New York teams win, when New York teams do well, they create rivalries, they create television ratings, they create storylines. And when New York teams win, it helps the sport, whatever sport it is. So even if they don't win the whole thing, for them to start doing well again is good for baseball. It will be good for the city, and it will be good for the fans. Yes, they did have a lot of injuries, but I've heard through the rumor mill from a lot of big guys that these guys were pampered a little too hardcore and were a little too lazy, and they need to really step up. And David Wright specifically is a very, very nice guy, but he's got to step up and be a leader of that team. He is the leader of that team. He's got to lead by example and lead by vocally in the locker room.
And I think it's a breath of fresh air with the new manager, new general manager, Terry Collins, who actually has not managed. I didn't realize he was out of the game that well. He was still involved in the game. 1999, he was managing the Anaheim Angels. So you have a new regime in place, and I think this is a wake-up call for any of the guys who were being a little bit lazy, maybe nursing their contracts, weren't hurt as bad as we thought they were.
Jason Bay's got to do better.
Yes.
David Wright has got to do better. Beltran has got to do better, and Reyes has to do better.
They all have to step.
They really all have to step it up. There's just about there's just about nobody on that New York Mets team that doesn't have to step it up and play better and play harder and give their heart. You know, maybe they should watch some film from the '86 Mets over and over and see those dirty uniforms and how hard those guys gritted it out on a nightly basis and figure out that that's what baseball is about.